to the Gab Talks by the Independent Press Award. I'm your hostess, Gabby Oldak. To participate in the 2024 Book Award competitions, please visit independentpressaward.com and NewYorkCityBigBookAward.com. This podcast, we will be visiting with Christina Vitagliano, author, entrepreneur, and childhood trauma survivor. Her memoir, Every 9 Minutes, was awarded a distinguished favorite in the 2024 New York City Big Book Award in the Socio-Political Change category and audiobook nonfiction. Christina is the founder and CEO of Monster Mini Golf, a nationwide family entertainment complex. Every 9 Minutes is a coming-of-age memoir that recounts Christina's life from age 3 to her mid-30s as she grapples with life changes while in the depths of sexual abuse and trauma. It is the story of resilience, courage, and a sincere portrait of a childhood abuse and trauma survivor. Despite the odds, Christina reclaims her life, persevered, and chose happiness and success. Christina joins us today from Las Vegas, where she lives with her husband, Patrick, of 24 years. Yes?
I'm 27 now, so it's a couple of years.
27, woo, you're catching up to me. And there are 2 four-legged children and an African gray rescue parrot. Congratulations, Christina, and thanks so much for joining the Gab Talks.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, Christina, Every 9 Minutes evolved over decades of writing. I understand it was a huge manuscript pre-editing. It spans 30 years, 3 years old to your mid-30s. You were sexually abused by your stepfather and then your stepbrother. Why cover such a vast amount of time in your life?
Well, it was important for me to share. It's just not about the abuse, which obviously shouldn't happen and is terrible, but how it affects you in different stages of your life. So when something like that happens when you're, 4 years old, you're a child, you're innocent. And that's a very different experience, or how it affects you, from when you're 10, 12 years old, and then when you're in your teens. And the evolution of how somebody deals with that over, that many years, and how you change and who you become, I wanted to share that. It was important to me because I think a lot of people go through those same stages, and it's helpful when you read something like that you're not alone. And it's also helpful for those who have no idea what it's like to experience something like that, yet they have all of these opinions. And it varies drastically whether this happens to a teenager or whether it happens to a child.
Yes, so, I agree with that. The title, the book is behind us. It's a really it's a really touching and powerful cover. Explain the significance of Every 9 Minutes, Christina.
Well, every 9 minutes in America, anyway, there's a case of child abuse reported. And to me, when I read that, it was just it just hits you, because I think the majority of people that this happens to don't report it. So you're thinking, holy cow, every 9 minutes, somebody's sitting in a police department or somewhere reporting a case of child abuse. So that's pretty bad as it stands as a statistic. And I don't think that touches the surface.
Yeah, which brings me to my next question. Why are sexual assault victims, specifically and particularly children, so fearful and reticent to tell someone, to tell their mom, to tell their grandma, to tell someone? Why did you hold back?
Well, for me, I mean, you're young. When you're a child, that's a child when you're 4, 5, right, 6 years old. All you want to do is, well, a couple of things. One, you want your parents to love you.
Yeah.
That's just, you want them to be with you. And for me, I didn't want to make any waves. I wanted my mom to be happy.
Because you had a blended family, just so.
Yeah.
Okay, so you didn't want to make any waves. Yeah.
Yeah, my mom had just gotten married. She used to cry all the time. That's all I remember when I was very tiny. And now she's with this man who makes her happy, and I'm going to be the one that ruins that.
Right. You didn't want to rock the boat. You just wanted her to be happy. Yeah.
Yeah. You just wanted everybody to be happy. And then your other fear is, as you get a little bit older, is you're getting tossed into an off. You're afraid, where
Yeah,
am I
that
going
you'll
to
be
go?
taken away from your family.
Yes.
You're going to an
Yes.
orphanage. A
Yep.
lot of fears there. So you vividly recounted in your book the moments before, during, and after when your stepfather really robbed you of your innocence, starting at
Yeah.
such a tender age. In the book, you wrote that you often wondered, doesn't my mom notice that he's gone in the middle of the night? Where is she? What's happening? Um, how do you feel about your mom? How did you feel back then? Yeah, how did you give it to us? How do you feel about it? And I know that you also wrote that eventually she sort of progressively got more hostile and angrier with you. Do you
Yeah.
think that's because she really did know something was happening and couldn't confront it?
Yeah, I do. I am so glad that back then I either didn't know, didn't want to believe it, or was too naive to want to believe it. But as I remember, as I got older, and I didn't live at home anymore, and I had a boyfriend, and I don't know when it was, but I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and he wasn't in bed. And I thought, oh, he must be or he's taking too long in the bathroom. And the first thing that came to my mind was I was worried. Where is he? I should go check on him.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that came to my mind was, holy cow, she knew. Because if I'm this age and I'm, whatever, 20 something years old, and I know that my body knew to wake up and say, oh, go check on that person.
Right.
She'd been with him forever,
Yeah.
So the second thing was, okay, he's okay. Now I'm just mad. I remember just laying there so angry and mad at myself because I thought I'd been deceived.
Well,
And I was deceived.
you
And
were deceived.
it's, and then you get hurt because you realize that she chose him over her child.
Yeah. Right. It says a lot about her.
And then there's like a million other emotions, that you go through.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, we talk a lot about society talks a lot about bullying, spend a lot of time talking about that as we should, and the bystanders. So your
Mhm.
mom really was a bystander. What do
Yeah.
you, if you could and you had the opportunity, what would you say to her? And what would you say to all the other bystanders?
You mean now?
Yeah.
Well, I did confront her. So it didn't get any better,
Yeah.
So it got to a point where after this kind of came out in the open and I met my now husband, I went to some therapy and it was very helpful. I realized that, and she was still in my life because you get conditioned over time, and not that any of it is right or good or any of that, but you get conditioned to be kind of who you are.
Yeah.
We all have faults.
Of
And
course.
I was still in the world where I was putting up with her and trying to please her. And she's insecure and she's got all these issues, but yet, I'm the strong one. So it's my job to keep her, upright. And I was just kept doing it. And then one day I got up and said, I can't do this anymore if I want to be a healthy person and go on with my life. And I made the choice to separate my family and most of my family from my life. And I know it sounds terrible, but it was probably the healthiest thing that I ever did.
Well,
And for some
they were
people,
really all bystanders, weren't they?
yeah,
They really did. So that's a question later on that I was going to ask you, but while we are on the topic, so how did your family react to your memoir, or you don't know because it sounds like you don't have a relationship with any
oh
of your
no,
stepfamily.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, they reacted because we have social media these days. So,
Yeah,
welcome
everything's
to the
out
world
there.
being able to say anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I have one brother that I'm still semi close to, who still has never admitted that, yes, I believe you, but hasn't said that, no, I don't believe you. Everybody else in the family took his side
Mm.
in various ways that are just beyond belief.
Astonishing. It really is.
Yeah.
So what would you say to those other bystanders that you're not related to? Someone out there that sees your book, is reading it, that is just sitting there ignoring and not confronting the fact that their child is being put through this trauma.
Yeah, well, I would say speak up.
Yes.
Get that, and I know to be get some balls and speak up. It's
Yeah.
not about you, but
It's not about you. Right.
yeah, people. This is what I've learned in life is that most people don't like the truth. The truth is a very hard pill to swallow, And if there's anything else that they can believe instead of the truth that fits in their lifestyle, that makes their life easier, that makes them sleep at night, then they're going to take that path. That's just, and it's unfortunate, but that's the majority of human beings. And look at this world today. We do that in so many different categories because it makes us feel more secure. Sometimes the truth is scary, and it changes your life in so many ways, and people don't like that.
You wrote this, you grew up during the 1970s, as I did. No internet, no social media, no email, no cell
Yep.
phone. So now everything is out there, but it doesn't seem like that much has changed.
No. No.
What?
And like you say, you give credit to this generation that speaks up about everything.
Yes.
They want everything, just change the history, take everything.
Yeah.
And good for them in a
Cancel
lot of
culture,
ways.
yeah.
But not this subject.
Why?
And I don't know why. So, and a lot of celebrities have spoken up because it's happened. I mean, it happened to them as well. And good, I'm glad they did. But I think what happens is if a celebrity speaks up about it, and they always should, I'm not knocking that in any way,
of course.
that the average person that's sitting at home says, yeah, but they're a celebrity and they're getting all this support. And they're bigger than life.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that I opted to share my story is because I'm not a celebrity. I'm not anybody special. I'm an average person that just, went through life like this. So I think the more people like us that can speak up about it, we need to, scream from the rooftop saying, hey, acknowledge this subject is bad and it should be fixed, or at least attempt to fix it. Nobody even does that. But it's weird. I was on LinkedIn the other day, and I don't know if it was from this award or I had my book was a book of the day on another platform.
Congratulations.
A few days ago. So thank you. And I was reading all the comments, and somebody said, well, that's great, but I don't know why anybody, and I've heard this comment a lot, anybody would write a book on this subject because nobody wants to hear about that.
Wow.
Those get me madder. Like that goes right into the category of my mom to me. Then that's why this is happening.
Yes, I agree. It took you 20 years to speak about your sexual assault.
Yeah.
Finally, you shared your story with with Patrick, your husband, 27 years, pretty quickly into your relationship.
Yeah.
How did that change your life, and why did you feel safe with Patrick to share your story?
I don't know if it was, I was 31 years old at the time. So I don't know if you hit this kind of milestone in your life where, dear God, I'm an adult. I need to, be an adult. So part of it, I think, was timing. Part of it was him. His personality was just that. Very in your face, kind of like, maybe that was the push that, that I needed. Nobody had ever asked, nobody ever pushed about that. So that, I think, was part of it. Maybe it was a perfect storm. I had been working very, very hard. I was a workaholic. And I thought, what am I going to do? I've just been working for people all my life. I mean, like 70, 80 hours a week working kind of jobs. And I always loved it. But, you hit that early 30s, I think all of us do, and you go through one phase. And you're like, what am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
What I was doing wasn't what I wanted to do. So I guess perfect storm. And I really started to change.
You were in a series of, shall I say, well, you've had quite a few dysfunctional relationships between your family, a series of long-term relationships, partners that you've had. What do they all have in common?
Wow, that's a good question. It's weird. They were all like solid guys. They didn't have none of them
like it. Yeah, the way you described them, they were good guys.
No drugs, nothing. And I've never been attracted to that, but they kind of all held their own. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's important. Like, I think because I took care of myself for so long, and I still do, and it bothers my husband a lot sometimes, but I never wanted to have to take care of a guy. And that was a good thing, I think, because I always attract a guy that kind of could stand on his own. They were, in a weird way, all okay with not asking me anything.
Interesting. But yet they said something, but they didn't ask.
Yeah, and I only my teenager as a teenager, I had one boyfriend that asked. That was it. The
Mhm.
rest of them, nothing.
But Patrick asked.
Patrick asked and did
Did you
and
say?
wouldn't and kept asking. So I just, I
Yeah.
gave in.
Okay.
And then
Um,
once you give in, you're
oh, once
yeah,
the floodgates
yeah,
open,
you're
that's
just gonna
it,
yeah, it's it.
sure.
Yeah.
You talk about this in your book as well. Often victims of abuse become abusers. They dive into addiction. Some tragically commit suicide. You, Christina, you completely defied the odds. You managed to be authentic. You stayed true to yourself. You were an independent young woman. You worked hard. How did you channel that pain to become successful?
I think when I was younger, and it was happening, in the house, for me, especially as you get to be a teenager, when all your friends, and it's normal, they're out, they're partying, they're having a good time. Um, I was terrified to lose control. There
Mhm.
was no way in hell that I was ever going to walk into that house not being 100% aware of everything that's going on. And if I drank or I did any kind of drugs or anything like that, that kind of knocked me down even a tiny step, I didn't feel secure enough to live, to
You
keep
had to be
going,
on your game at all times.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you just become so aware. I mean, I can walk in a room and probably not so much now because I've chilled a little bit,
Yeah.
but everything that's going on in that room.
Mhm.
You can see 180 degrees. I mean, I think that's probably why I was successful at managing nightclubs.
Mhm.
Thousands of people in the room. You just know what's going on,
Life going everywhere.
Yeah.
You wrote in the book that ironically, you credited your stepfather, your abuser,
Mhm.
for giving you inner strength. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. And it's weird. I remember my editor. I had 5 editors throughout this book because
Wow.
it sat there for like 20 years. But the last editor I have, I love her. I remember writing that paragraph where I think I used the word I have to thank, my stepfather and then my
Yes.
uncle too, who I had, just as crazy of a relationship with. Not like that though. Um, and she sent back the last, I think it's last chapter, and she said, do not use the words thankful. You do not thank him. You can give them credit. You can say, this is why I am who I am, but dear God, don't thank
And
them, right? I said, all right, all right. She's
yeah.
right. So I had to, reword that a little bit. But it's weird and it's very ironic. And no, am I thankful? No. But I am who I am because they tried to, or my stepfather tried to just bring me down so much that I fought mentally against him.
Mhm.
I'm not going to crack. I'm not going to be weak. I won't lose control. And because of that, obviously became a workaholic, but my senses, everything is so sharp, and I think a lot of abuse victims, you develop these weird, and I know it sounds kind of strange, you develop senses, though, what's going on around in your surroundings. So for me, that's what I was good at. And as you grow older, I'm like, well, this is what I got. What can I do that's going to work for me and make me money in this world? And, just kind of how it happened.
So Christina, you're an award-winning author now.
Yeah.
But congratulations. But you've been writing most of your life. You were gifted a diary when you were a young girl
Yeah.
by, I think, your cousin, who was
Yeah.
also abused in her
Yeah.
way
She's
also.
a
Um,
good egg.
how did that change your life? How did the diary change your life?
um, Without giving away too much in the book, the diary, and I think to this day, I don't know if, I think young girls still have diaries, whether it's in
Yeah.
the form of a tablet or something like that now. That is so healthy. You have this person, or this imaginary friend in a weird way to just say whatever to. I
Your
mean, I think all the
confidant.
kids now have therapists. We didn't have therapists back then.
Yeah. But it's your confidant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that
It
had
was
to be therapeutic for you.
It was, and you don't know it because you're too young to know any
Right.
better. But it's like a release of some kind where you can say, hey, this is what's happening. And at the end of the night, you close that book and, and it's
Now they
there.
call it journaling. That's what they
Yeah,
call it
journaling. I'm
now,
sure it's
journaling.
online too.
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah,
tablets or
journaling.
something like that.
I think some
But yeah,
my daughter journals, and I think she actually writes. Although I
that's
haven't asked her
wonderful.
if she I don't know. They don't know how to write anymore, so I'm not
Yeah.
really. So, in 2004, you said you're a workaholic. You were working 80 hours a week. In 2004, you founded Monster Mini Golf.
Yes.
20 years later, there are over 30 locations nationally. For those folks out there who are not familiar with the concept, it's fantastic. It's an indoor glow in the dark monster themed mini golf entertainment center. I've been there a million times with my family.
Awesome.
Um, it's awesome. I Tell us how you came up with that concept. What happened?
Well, when I got done writing my first draft of the book, which is like you said, 20 something years ago, I quickly learned that from your first draft, which was like 680 pages, it was insane.
Wow.
I had to have it edited, and you have to bring it to a professional editor. At the time, back then it would go to, hopefully, to be shopped to a traditional publishing house. Now things have changed so much. And what I learned was that it cost about $5,000 to have the book edited at the time. I didn't have any money. We lived on, day to day and whatever we could make or week to week. And I didn't want to take any of our money to put it towards something like that might never be published. So I said to my husband, I was working with him at the time with a sound company. I said, what if I create something that I can do on the side part-time, and it'll raise money to edit the book on the side, right? I mean, raise money to edit the book. And he's like, sure, go ahead, do what you want. So I called a friend of mine. We lived in this really tiny town in Northeast Connecticut, like an old mill town, very blue collar town. And she owned this little bar, hippie bar. And I am not a hippie by any means, right? I'm the exact opposite. But she said, yeah, Christina, I could use a bartender. I trust you. That'd be great. So I worked there for her, and it was so bizarre for me. But I worked there for her for like a few shifts a week. And whatever I made, I would take that money and go buy I don't know, glue or something. I said, I'm gonna make this, crazy monster mini golf course. And at the time, before that, I said to my husband, I think I know what I want to do. I think I know how to raise the money. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to build an indoor mini golf. And he's like, why? We live in, New England. Nobody wants to be indoors. I said, because I have to work year round in order to do this.
Yeah.
So in this old mill, this is where all of his sound equipment was stored that we rented out. And the guy said, okay, you can use this space. And it was just horrible old space. So I said, if I take everything that I know and I dump it into this, what do I come up with? So we came up with Monsters because it was this old mill that should have been condemned. It's black light because the same reason the mill should be condemned. And I learned in the nightclub business that if everything's black and you just turn on these lights you want people to see, like colored lights, then they only see that. So that's how the black light thing came to be in the neon. And then we added music when we realized, hey, this is busy in here, so let's make it fun. Now we have a DJ on the golf course. So the plan was open this little place, work with a friend, just me and a friend, and we'll raise $5,000 to edit the book.
Wow.
So
unbelievable.
That's how the first one opened. Yeah.
And then it's 30 history after that. That's a
it sat on my desk for a long time because I did get sucked right back into working.
And
then I was driven. And it was working. And then my husband said, holy cow, you're right, this is working. So then he sold his sound company, joined me, and then we franchised it. And, there you go, 18 years later, it's 2020. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Amazing. So why survivor instead of victim?
I don't even like Survivor. So it's weird. Okay. So to me, people, and not that we obviously did survive it, but to me, a survivor is somebody that's breathing.
Okay.
So I could get into a car accident, be hooked up on a million tubes, laying in the hospital, and I've survived it. I don't want to survive it. I've been through all of that. My gosh, that's terrible. So I want to thrive, I want to overcome, because you can never overcome it. I think that if you can get to the point where it doesn't own you, and that's a big hurdle.
Is that your advice for people?
Yes, because I'm never going to forget it. It's never going to go away. You can't, it doesn't just go away. It's like when somebody passes away that's close to you, that never goes away, but you have to keep moving on in life. And how do you get it to where you can function even in, knowing that it's in the back of your head?
Yeah.
So it doesn't own me anymore. Now I use it as, in some ways it's they're tools.
It fuels you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any regrets, Christina?
Uh, I would say not speaking up when I was a kid. You would think that should be a regret that I have. Yes, it is in some ways, and in other ways, I am who I am because of that. But yes, I would say, well, I have one big regret, I would say. Um, when I was probably in my early 30s, my older brother got married and had kids, and one of them was a girl. And then I got scared because now I had this responsibility.
Is this the older brother that abused you as well?
Yeah, yeah. So for the first time in my life, I was like, this isn't about you anymore.
Yeah.
Not just about you anymore, and my dad, my other brothers had kids too, and I was concerned about my dad, and you get really torn. Do I say something? My life will just be a disaster. But I'm old enough now, so I did. I spoke up and I said, hey, and I'm going to be very vague here, because there's people that are still alive, I guess, I don't know. And I said, hey, heads up. I went to his wife. I went to another person in my family. I said, there's a girl on the way. Maybe you guys should be aware of what's happening or could happen in this household.
Wow,
Holy cow.
that's really brave. And what happened?
Oh, dear God, you have no right to say anything. This is, my husband. He's a, blah, blah, blah. He's the best. That's your brother. This is, it was bad. It got to the point where I remember sitting on the curb one day, and one of the people in my family were yelling at me because I was going to bring a mess into the family, and this was her chance of ever owning her first house, and she works with him, and who am I to upset anything and make a mess of the family? She is going to get this house. And I thought to myself, you are choosing a house over a child's well-being. And I said, God damn it, it just keeps going on and on and on, because so did my mom. And it doesn't change, it just doesn't. It's crazy.
Goes back to my question earlier. Now that everything is exposed, how do we get things to change?
And
because this is
everybody asks that same question.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah.
I mean, we teach about bullying in schools, but I feel like this is something that we should be educating kids about.
You would think it's a biggie. It's a real biggie.
Yeah,
and it's happening so often. It really is, and it's horrible. The people that do read the book, there's it's a mix. There's the people who've never experienced this that read it and say, holy cow, this is eye-opening. And there's so many others that will message me and say, I went through this. This is my experience. Yeah. And their experience makes my experience look like a walk in the park. And there are endless stories like that. Wow. And that's terrifying.
Wow. But what's your hope and message for the children right now who are being assaulted every 9 minutes you know of? What's your hope for them?
You're not alone. I think we all feel like when you're that age, when you're young, you feel like you're alone.
Yeah.
And you always ask, people ask me, what's your opinion? What's the answer? I don't know if I have the right answer, because if you do speak up, and I always think you should, I think no matter what, you should always speak up. I think it's similar to when you're walking into a divorce and you don't want to go into a divorce, so you live through it for years and years because you don't want to go through the agony. But yet, as soon as you open that door to the agony, it sucks for a long time.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, it's so much better than where you came from, and it does pay off. But
I guess that'll circle back to my next question, which is, what is the number one piece of advice that you could offer to survivors? I know you don't like that word, but folks who have gone through this type of trauma, what is the biggest piece of advice you could offer them?
Talk to somebody. And my advice is don't make yourself the victim. Be a survivor or a thriver. But as soon as you decide you want to pin the victim card on you, you're a victim for the rest of your life. Victim is not a fun place to be. And a lot of people do, they choose that. And I think there's, obviously there's some of us that are stronger than others, and that's just how life is.
Yeah.
But, surround yourself with people that don't just continue to be okay with that.
Christina, do you have any resources, or I know you work with some organizations and foundations, resources that you can offer thrivers to tap into?
There are, without going into, I think every area has them. So I could, you could say you could call this, the hotline or whatever. But I think the most important for me, if you go on to, even if you're on any social media platforms, there's always groups for survivors. But if you stay kind of in your network, I don't know why that feels warmer to me.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I do.
Because you'll find somebody that maybe you can connect with that is your friend or can help you actually get out of that situation that you're in.
Absolutely, I agree.
I know that wasn't a very good answer, but I think,
Yeah, so listen, it's out there, social media. There's in the internet we can find certainly anything, and there is a
if
lot
you're in school, your teacher.
of
My
teaching.
teachers were my saviors. Even though I never said anything, they were the adults in my life. I looked up to them so much, but they have a responsibility if you say something, and they know how to do it correctly. They're
Yeah,
taught that.
that's true. Teachers are trained in that to handle that type of situation. They know what to do, who to call. That's great advice. So finally, Christina, thank you so much for this. Where can we purchase Every 9 Minutes and find out a little bit more about you?
On my website, and it's very simple. It's 123christinav.com. All of my social medias are the same thing at 123christinav.com, and also Amazon.com. All platforms. It's paperback, Kindle, audiobook, hardcover.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Christina, for sharing your story with us. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Thanks for meeting with us today. Join us next podcast when we speak with Alan Northcott about his children's book, The Legend of Christmas Moose. Until next time, this is your hostess, Gabby Olzak. Keep on reading. Thank you.